Hello! So, in this spirit talk, we're going to be talking about something that's very much related to reality, related to history. It is so important that we keep the memory of the dangers and the harm and the negative impact that genocides have on our societies, on human history. Why? Because genocides are the keys to history. They are the keys to us knowing about ourselves, knowing about the lowest points in our humanity, when we acted like monsters and not humans. We are all part of the same cosmic family. So when you hurt another person, you actually are hurting yourself. So I'm going to be jumping right into genocide. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to talk about genocide just because it is a tragic, devastating, and sad topic, that is even more of a reason why it needs to stay relevant in the zeitgeist. It needs to stay relevant in the media. It needs to stay relevant in our everyday conversations, because genocides are so severe. They cause great harm. So we're seeing them happen. So I do know there is a genocide against Persian culture by the Arabization of Persian people. The Islamic State is forcing their population to adhere to theocratic dogma that takes away from Persian history and Persian culture and Persian values. That is a cultural genocide. What is happening to so many people? So I want to jump into it and say the Rohingya genocide in Myanmar, that is happening. The genocide against the Uyghur Muslims in China, that is happening. The genocide against the Yazidis by the Islamic State, that is happening. What we need to do is continue to speak out. I know that Kurdish people are also being genocide, and that the Kurdish people have their own unique culture that's not the same as Arab. Arabization is taking over people's cultures. This is wrong. So a lot of the violence in Africa is due to the forced Arabization. They're forcing people to be Arab when they're not. They're forcing their religion on others, and they're using violence, extremist violence, and violating human rights by imposing their religious practices on women, children, men, anybody. They're not sparing anybody. They are forcing their religion on others in Africa. They're doing that. They're forcing people to be Arab and Muslim when they're not. They're not. And this has happened to millions and millions of people over the world. This forced hatred of hating your human value. So that's why you have to say stop. Stop forcing your religion on me. Say it. Stop forcing your religion on me. It is not right to force in a religion on a person. A person is supposed to be able to explore and discover life for themselves so they can find their religion. So we need to speak out against the genocide against Persian people, the genocide against Rohingyas, the genocide against Uyghur Muslims, genocide against Yazidis and Kurds in the Middle East. Let people be themselves. Do not force your religion on others. Do not force your religion on others, because that makes your religion corrupt. And your religion loses legitimacy when you force it on others, because you're forcing dogma. And dogma is anti-religion, because religion says be the higher precept, be the higher concept that is found within the religion. So gravitating towards the lower dogma, that's just because it's written down doesn't mean you have to do it. Just because it's written down doesn't mean you have to do it. That is why dogma is so dangerous, because dogma makes people see that they have to force their way of life on others, and that is against religion. If it was clear-cut, and if you said how to be, then it becomes dogmatic. Don't ever tell anybody how to be. That's not your right. You don't have any right to tell anyone how to be. So that's the number one defense against genocide, is saying, you don't have the right to tell me how to be. That is how people protect themselves against genocide, is saying, you do not have the right to force your dogma, your illegitimate laws, your oppression. You don't have the right to force your violence on me. This is our best way to protect ourselves from genocide, is to actively say it. And so we are so lucky that we have a United Nations. We are so lucky that we have an International Court of Human Rights. We are so lucky to have these institutions. And Eleanor Roosevelt, she carried the international human rights. There exists human rights. It doesn't matter if your country's in a dictatorship right now and they're violating human rights. Ooh, they're going to be in trouble eventually. They're going to be in trouble eventually because violating human rights is written into history. We now have a track record. We now know what you did, and we can actually observe it and be like, whoa, they violated human rights. They forced their religion through violence and intimidation on other people. That is written into history, the harm and the violations that were done. So seeing that there is a paper trail is what the UN and what the international courts of human rights will eventually do the work, and they would see what happened in Iran. Women being killed for showing their hair and for walking down the street alone. Women being killed for being themselves. That is a violation of human rights. Killing someone because they are attracted to someone who is their same gender, that is a violation of human rights. Burning down Christian churches, that is a violation of human rights. Doing anything that involves violence, intimidation, oppression, beating up somebody because they're different than you, that is a violation of human rights. So when that happens on a large scale, that is when our inhumanity is really written into history, because we're able to see it in the open. It's all out in the open. So genocides happen, and they do happen in history, and we have to be on our guard. We've got to speak up against the human rights violations that's going on in the world. Just because it's not happening in your country, don't think it's not. And don't think it's not happening somewhere else. Because we are all connected, we should be concerned. We should be very concerned about these violations. So that is why genocides are the key to history. Because once you find where the atrocities and the violations occurred, you now have a trail and you can connect the dots of how we have resilience and we have courage to stand up against it. Because what? We are the winners of history. We have the light. We have the light of humanity and the light of compassion, the light of reason and the light of understanding, the light of forgiveness. Those who violate human rights, they don't have a light. They only have fear, and fear is not a light. Fear is complete anti-light. So speak out against the fear and realize the fear is beneath you and you are stronger.